Hi everybody, welcome to the Amateur Grassroots Footy Show brought to us by West End. A couple of special guests, big show for you tonight too, as I welcome Gary McIntosh to the show. Macca, how are you?
I'm well, Phil, and we've already seen some great games in the SAFL so far, so it looks like it's going to be a good season.
All right, if it's going to be a good season, it's going to be because of the President, and he's been good enough to join us. Gino, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Phil. Good to see you, Macca.
You too, Gino.
Thank you.
Gino, let's get to you. Thebarton, of course, was one of your babies, one of your projects. The lights at Thebarton, where are we with the lights?
I would have liked to have had them up this year, but we've run into a bit of a problem. We now find out our towers need to be re-engineered, and we've got a cost of something like about $80,000 to fix those, which there's 6 of them. Or we go with 4 new ones, not the 6. We go with the 4, and so that's our next step. We've got the money for the lights, but we need the money for the towers. And I'm talking to the federal boys, Steve Georgianis, a great supporter of us at Amateur League, and hopefully I can source the extra 80 or 100,000 that we need for the towers through federal grants, and hopefully it's this year.
All right, Macca, you'd have a lazy 100 on you, wouldn't you? Can you slide that over to Gino to get things started?
Well, not at the minute, but I played at Thurby going back years ago, Gino, and it was a beautiful ground. The lighting, we played night games there, and the lighting was never that great. Do you sort of envisage maybe a night grand final for the Division 1 comps, Division 2 comps down the track?
Never say you can never say no on anything if you really want to get on in this world. There's certainly that's on the table. I'm not going to say it is or isn't going to happen. We would like to get the lights up and running. We are aiming for about 350 lux. That would encourage the SNFL's sides also to play night games there. And consequently, why not a night final?
If you never say never and you can get the lights up, Gino, can you get a roof on it? Could we see AFL played at Thebarton?
Well, a couple of umbrellas, I reckon, would be pretty fine. You're telling me about this place in America that's got an umbrella. Maybe that's what we need.
All right, the future for Thebarton, what is the future for Thebarton?
Look, we want to create a sporting hub, not only for football, but all other sports. And there's a lot of minor sports that struggle for a headquarters. We'd certainly like to do that. But I guess the real secret is it's a commercial venture for the league and for amateur football. And if we can create the sporting hub, embracing the community in that area, we'll go well with it.
Like Macca said at the start of the show, there's already been a couple of ripper games this year. What do you see this year? How do you see the standard of the SA?
I've seen probably, let's say, a Div 4, 2 Div 1 games, a Div 3 and a Div 2 game. And I've got to tell you, it's good footy, real good footy. And didn't see the last weekend's AFL games of the Adelaide teams, but I can tell you and tell the people out there that if you want to see real footy, come and see the Amateur League. And certainly Div 1, the standard of football is excellent.
It's interesting you talk about that, because I spoke to a few of our players after we played St Iggy's in round 1 and St Peter's round 2. And because we've just come out of Division 1, I asked the players what they thought of the standard, and those first 2 games, they said that it's the equal of playing in Division 1, the speed of the game. So it's a good sign for the comp that the undergrades are starting to really come up in their level as well.
Can you see that, Macca, from last year to this year? You can see a lift in the standard?
Oh, for sure. In Division 2, it's traditionally a tough grade, and this year it's up and about again.
All right, if the standard's up, then the standard of umpires need to be up, Gino. Now, we won't talk about your playing career in the umpires, but the umpires this year, are you getting much from them?
Look, that's certainly a problem area. The trouble is we need the umpires. I'm a great supporter of the umpires. We do, and I'll perhaps talk about AFL level. I don't think their standard has improved, so that probably reflects a bit down in the grades. What we as administrators want is the umpires to be consistent. If you're going to, and I have umpired, and so I know what I'm talking about in terms of this. If you just call the obvious free kicks and you're consistent with it, you can you never go wrong. And that's, I think, any player that's played just wants the umpire to be consistent. Don't pull out a ticky touchwood 1 minute and then not play it the next minute. So if you only play the obvious ones, let the game flow, you'll end up with a good game.
So as long as they're consistent, you're pretty happy with that. Mac, you and I have both coached. We've given plenty of advice to umpires over our time. The first couple of weeks, how have you seen the standard?
Not too bad. We had a young fella umpire us last week. Thought he'd done a terrific job. May have been his first game at that level. Look, we've got to keep encouraging these people. What sort of monetary return do umpires get?
They do pretty well. I'll be honest. I'm not. I reckon it's about the 140 mark for Div 1. So it's good money on a Saturday afternoon.
Yep.
Down to about $80 for the lower grades, and for a couple of hours' work. There's not too many trades that get those sort of dollars, so that's certainly good money. And look, it's a reward and pastime. If you can't play footy or don't want to play footy, umpire, and it's not hard to do. Remember, you're the man in charge. You got the whistle, and anyone wants to give you any trouble, you've got the final say.
Yeah, I think the key with all of that is you touched on it, Jenna. You can't play without them. So if they're out there, they expect to get a little bit, but have a bit of fun, but don't keep riding them for the whole game. You mentioned it before at Thebarton. You get the lights up, set up the way you'd like. Perhaps some SANFL games there. The relationship between the SANFL and the amateur footy.
Very good. We're very much on board with the SANFL, and a lot of that is due to David Shipway, who's chairman of the Community Footy Board, which I'm also on, and David's on the commission of the SANFL. And I've got to say, since his involvement, grassroots footy has benefited greatly, whether it's metropolitan or country. Probably 25, 30 years ago, Shippy I remember a couple of years ago making a statement at a function I was at Footy Park, referring to myself, and said this little chap here, if he had his way 25 years ago with his mafia mates, would have come in here and blown this place up. And he was actually right, because I didn't have a very high opinion of the SANFL, but because they wouldn't listen. They were arrogant, didn't want to know us, didn't want to talk to us. That has certainly changed the last 7 or 8 years, certainly since Amateur League have been affiliated. And it's gone very well, and I can see the great benefits. They are very much on side with us. The SANFL umpires trained at Thebarton, and that was due to Lee Wicker and Rod Pays helping us in that area, and that's an income for us, and we're certainly on board with them, and very happy.
Mackie, you're a legend with the Norwood Footy Club, SANFL, of course now coaching in the Amateur League. Do you see that the relationship from your point of view has got better over time?
Well, we don't get to have a great deal to do with it. So for us, I spoke to Gino early on about how the relationship was, and I suppose over the last 5 years, it's probably got a lot better, and that's good for footy. We need need these competitions working in harmony for the benefit of footy. From the player that gets $1 million a year to the player that's getting nothing, and they're just both as important as each other.
All right, the relationship with the AFL then, Gino, do the AFL have much to do with the Amateur Footy League?
They do assist us, and I can't argue too much with it that they've certainly contributed towards our lights. We've got $100,000 on the table towards our lights from the AFL. But there's so much more that they can do. Again, and it's a little bit of the old system that they're in charge of the ship and they reckon they don't need to talk to the blokes on the lower deck. But I like to remind people like that down the bottom is the grassroots footy, and if we haven't got the 10,000 kids playing footy as we do in South Australia in community footy, you don't get your AFL players coming through the system. And just occasionally they needed to be reminded of that. And in reality, there's so much more they could do for us. And probably I'll just go across the Crawford report, which was instigated by the Olympic Committee, trying to encourage the federal government to put more money at the top end, at the elite end of all sports, mainly the Olympics, of course, but the AFL considered the same thing. The interesting thing with the Crawford report, it actually came back and said, no, you actually got to put the money in at the bottom end, down at the grassroots level. And it's interesting that Crawford report has been shelved somewhere within the federal government, and nobody's doing anything about it. Yet it clearly identified the problem, and we need money in at the bottom end to make footy survive.
Would it be fair to say one of the great things about the Amateur Footy League is when an AFL player or an SANFL player feels that his time's up for whatever reason at those levels, they come back into the Amateur Footy League and actually put a lot in, either as a player with their experience with the younger players or as a coach, that if that isn't rewarded and that fell away, suddenly there's a big gap for a lot of those players to be able to function properly without weaning themselves off of footy as well.
Yeah, and look, I think Gary McIntosh is an example. A very well-known footballer in SANFL is now involved with Payneham Norwood Union. We've had Eddie Hocken, Darren Jarman,
Wayne Wiedemann.
Wayne Wiedemann is still there now, yep. And we can go through. You've caught me short naming them all.
Oh, Greg Anderson's there.
Yeah, Greg Anderson at where my lad plays at Jeps, and. one of the things I do when I go around the grounds is when I see these people, go and listen to the way they talk, and they are teaching. And I love it. I love to hear the way they talk. It's not yelling and ranting and raving the old Neil Curley style. It is actually trying to instruct and teach these players how to play football. And some people tend to forget that, even at 25, 30, you can still teach somebody something.
Do you sense, Gino, I sense in your voice there's an energy and an enthusiasm in the role you're in as president of the Amateur Footy League. What's life like being the president of Amateur Footy League?
Oh, it has its has its moments, and I enjoy it. And whilst I'm enjoying it and achieving the goals that I've set myself to achieve, I'll continue it. My wife sometimes complains that she doesn't see me too often between my business and the amateur league, and then on top of that I've got a family. But she knows I enjoy it. She does support me, and I enjoy what I do. I've played a lot of footy. My motto has been I've done everything good and bad you can do in footy, and I think I'm putting something back in for what I got out of it, and I know what it did for my kids. And footy, any sport, is a great educator within life, within the community. And I think that's important. So I've got that enthusiasm, that's for sure.
You know, the names like Demetriou and Ferraro and Capagreco, well, those names to me are synonymous with the Adelaide City Soccer Club. You know, where does the Gino Capagreco story start with football?
Actually, I was a soccer player up to 14. And I decided it wasn't exciting enough. And, you know, again, living out at Salisbury and going to the local primary school, the soccer players were a little bit, very small group, and I wanted to be amongst my Aussie mates. And I'm born here, and I'm certainly Australian, and so I wanted to be part of that. So I switched across at about 14 and started to play junior colts at Salisbury Footy Club, which was basically a country town. We had junior colts, senior colts. And from there, that was the start of my football, and I've enjoyed every moment of it.
Well, Gino, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here on the Amateur Footy Show, Grassroots, with us. Before we go, stay with us after the break, of course. West End's Lucky Player of the Week. The rules are pretty simple. All that happens is the pictured player who gets the most votes wins 30 cans of West End draft. So I reckon you get a picture of yourself, Macca, and we'll vote for you.
I reckon there'll be a few lads voting for themselves when their picture's up there.
All right, get on the website. It's saafl.asn.au/West End. Get in and vote for that player. We'll be back in a moment.